Hey everyone, Pastor Nat here with Win the Day, 5 minutes in the Bible to help you move closer to God each day. That's why today we're going to talk about the importance of living with intentionality. Which is better, living or death? I suppose that might depend on what kind of life you lead or what kind of death you might be facing. A life of torture might sound worse than a quick death in your sleep. A life of luxury might sound better than a slow and painful death. But what if it didn't matter what kind of life you lived, or the death you faced for that matter? But rather, what motivated how you live, and even how you die? That was Paul's strategy. What do I mean by that? Let's listen to the Apostle Paul in Philippians chapter 1. For to me, living means living for Christ, and dying is even better. But if I live, I can do more fruitful work for Christ. So I really don't know which is better. Paul's words seem like pure foolishness, don't they? He says, I don't know what's better. To live means being a slave for Christ, but death, that sounds really good. It's fascinating. Paul knew prestige, influence, resources, and even pedigree. But he was willing to give it all up to be a slave to Christ. He traded influence for shipwrecks. He traded pedigree for humiliation. He traded resources for prison. Yet Paul could say with honesty, for to me, living means living for Christ. I can do more fruitful work. For Paul, living as a slave for Christ was a life to desire and pursue. On the flip side, Paul said, but to die? That sounds even better. Now, Paul wasn't stupid or naive. Paul wasn't the Norman Vincent Peale of his day who thought that positive thinking meant positive outcomes. Paul knew that death wouldn't be pretty. But what awaited him on the other side of death? It was worth it all. It's like when my wife and I travel. We love to be together, but we also long to be home with our boys. Both are enjoyable, but to be reunited as a family, that's a strong desire. But Paul's desire was to truly be in God's will. Whatever God wanted, whether a life of service or death and reunion, he would be obedient. Now, some people have said you can be too heavenly minded to be any earthly good. In my experience, we are far too earthly minded to be any heavenly good. You see, we are called to be confident in Christ, so much so that we live intentionally for a heavenly purpose, no matter what hardship or opportunity we might face. So here's my challenge for you today. Make a course correction. Many of us, including myself, we can be so focused on ourselves. I can be so focused on my desires, or even the desires of my family, that I take my eyes off the will of God. I can become selfish with my time, my talents, and my treasures. But you see, that shows confidence in my stuff and not on Christ. I want to live like Paul. I want to live intentionally for the sake of Christ and long for heaven with him. So take time today and remove the distractions that keep you from living a life on purpose and for a purpose. When we do this, we will live as Paul lived and as Christ called us to. Truly, we will say to live is Christ and to die is gain.